Hi, what's up? It's Simon HC and welcome to our first lecture. Today we have a very nice guest, Dominic Hamala, a professional photographer, which will explain all about lenses, cameras, and also the connection between real cameras and V-Ray physical camera. So enjoy the show, and I will guide you very fast through composition techniques in architecture. So not much 3D today, but it's a good base to start. So stay with us and let's begin. So first I'd like to show you some very basic shots like this teapot here. And as you probably know, it's a center composition. And I'd like to focus today on a few key elements of composition. And number one, and it's also the last number, by the way, that's framing. And it's using some foreground elements or devices to frame the image area, and this will give us more control on the whole composition on the image, so we can focus the viewer attention on a specific point in the picture, and that's very important for the photographer or a CG artist, especially in architecture. So let's jump through the types of composition. We have here a symmetry, of course, very boring, an array, very static composition. So we have, in most cases, the verticals here. We have also a dynamic composition with diagonal lines, which make it dynamic. And we have an open composition, a closed composition, and now how to compose. Okay, let's jump quickly to a definition of composition. So composition is a part of the entire creative scene process. So it involves visual selection, visual ranking, and visual focus. And what does it say is actually that we need to choose which elements we want to be most exposed in our rendering for the viewer. We need to decide to focus on the doors, on the windows, on the foreground grass, plants, or on the building itself. So there are a few steps you should take in the beginning before you even start to think about a scene. So you should check the environment. On photographs, go to the site, take few measurements to get the scale of the environment, and see all elements, identify, isolate, and simplify to get the idea how to very quick in an efficient way translate those elements into the CG world. So we have here a very nice composition. It's a project from Nadeau Laverne, my partner from France. It's already built, and it's a nice cordon steel project, a very dynamic composition. And also here we have a static composition, because in most elements we have vertical lines, but it's not even a center composition, even though it seems to be. But as you can see, we have here a few elements on the bottom edge that are slightly moved to the right side, and the overall balance of weight of the elements is not in the symmetry, and this is why it's actually looking so fine. And we have also the framing on the bottom, which means we have some elements on the foreground that are cutting off the building from it and make us focus on it. I have also prepared for you guys a few definitions that might be useful in the future. I will not read it now, but you can download also the PDF file and do it sometime later. I just wanted to talk about design drawings like plans, elevations, sections, perspective, and scale, because in most cases I work with architects, and they use a very specific dictionary. I'm also an architect, but in some cases it's even hard to me to understand what they want to pass. So you can take a quick look, just check it out, and who knows, maybe it will be useful also for you guys. It helped me anyway. So let's start with planning the shot. We have here a shot I did some time ago. It's a hotel building in Gdańsk, Poland, and I had the pleasure to design this building even though it has been never completed. But that's a totally different story, maybe another time. So in this composition we don't have a symmetry, a center composition, nothing like that. We have some elements on the foreground, on the right side, on the left upper corner, some hanging branches with an O, and that's cool because it's closing the composition and it's keeping our focus in the center of the image, right on the building, and that was my intention. Same story actually on this picture. The difference is we have the building pushed a bit to the left side, so the balance is more on the left, and we have also a few elements like leaves and a tree on the right side on the foreground, which are framing the image. And in this case we have actually three different color surface. First we have the sand of the beach, and then we have a green wall of the trees, and also the blue sky. And this composition of colors, when you go very far from the image, is looking even cool. And it's not even important than what's on the image, and that's the most important thing, to have the right composition, because even though you have a great perfect rendering, the composition will be wrong. You will notice this at the first glance, even from 50 meters or even farther. It's not important. Even if it's a small dot, you will notice there's something wrong, and then later on you can notice it's a great stuff, and we have plenty of great details, but in general it's not working. So before you even start to think about the 3D, sometimes it's good to start with a white paper. So I designed the building, so I knew the building very well, and I did also some sketches on the design process. But before I did the renderings, I started to think about the shots, how to show the building in his proportions in the best way. I knew it's very long, so I have focused on the front and the back side of the building, and I decided to show the side long elevation and not a very strong perspective. So this is the first shot, and first sketches also that I had in my mind how I like to show it. And in the next stage we have the front view, and once again a very simple sketch. You can take your 5 minutes to do this. If you're not very good in 2D drawings, you can just make a sketch also in 3D with basic shapes. And the idea is just to talk with the client and pass your ideas to him how the shot could look like. And if you convince him this will work, you have 50% of success, because later on you know what to do, and it's going very fast. You don't need to model the whole scene, and it's perfectly working fine. Same story here. So the first shot, I didn't even know if I want to show the beach sand, but in the end it did a nice effect about the colors, so I did. But the shot stayed very similar to the first idea. Let's go to the frames. So that's actually what I'm talking about still, is the framing. So the elements on the right side, on each edge, on the left side also, that are covering the image. And now the main focus we have in the center of the image. Of course, it don't have to be the center, but the base idea, like here, stays the same. And if you have some urban scenes, you don't need to add every time trees, bushes, or rocks. You can use to achieve this effect other buildings or elements, like building roof elements, building corners, and so on. I like to say few words about the rule of the thirds, because there are some compositions that we find really nice to look at, and in most cases, when we will divide our screen into 9 elements, 3 on the height and 3 on the width, we will gain a nice mesh, and we can compose our object into that mesh. I'm pretty sure our photographer will talk about it too. So in this case, I decided to place the horizontal line in the 1/3 of the height of the image, and this is giving me a very nice balanced composition because the building is very tall and looking also heavy. I have the gravity point located in the 1/3, counting from the bottom, of course. Once again, we have the same building, and please pay attention, we have all the verticals perfectly parallel, and you can do this by a very simple rise front shift movement. And in the V-Ray camera is the vertical shift value, and you can change the value using a custom one, or you can push the gas vertical shift button, and you should get also a nice effect in most cases. But you gotta be careful, because in some cases you might receive a distortion of so-called heavy tops. So the lines will retain actually parallel, but they might appear to be diverging slightly. Another shot from the side with all parallel lines, and another story. When we get really close to the object, we don't have that possibility to have all the lines parallel. Even though the architects are loving it, in some cases it's not possible, because imagine if we will now straighten all the lines and using the even rising front shift movement, then we would receive a very strong distortion, and that's not what we want to happen. And on this picture, I'd like to show you a very strong vignette effect on the upper side of the image, and that's because we have also here the rising front shift movement to show the building from a specific point, from top to the bottom on one picture, and that's the effect. Some people say on my renderings the vignetting is too strong, and when you have a very tall building and you want to retain all parallel lines, all vertical lines parallel, then there's no other way in the real world. So, and here's an example of one of the recent renderings, and the idea was to get that effect also here. I know we can control all effects in 3ds Max, but somehow I feel even some distortions or the inaccuracy or imperfections in renderings bring them more natural, and this makes them looking better. And these two pictures are showing the difference between a shot from a regular fixed plane camera and a camera by using a simple rising front shift movement on the right side, which is very popular in architecture. And in this picture, I'd like to show you the slightly distortion on the top edges of the building, because we have the rising front shift movement once again applied, but the building is so tall, and in a specific point you might have the feeling the top edges are not parallel anymore. They are slightly diverging, and it's not a good effect. And you can avoid this effect by changing the vertical shift value in V-Ray, and just cool down a bit this effect, and it's done. And now a few words about the setting the view. So I'd like to show you some screenshots from my first base project, from a recent project for the office building. And it's always that way when I'm working with a new client or even with my regular client. So I'm saving first few shots which I create on very simple planes. I use AutoCAD drawings. I create from them simple JPEGs. I do screenshots or render to JPEG, whatever. And then in 3ds Max I build simple shapes, and then I can set the view easily and decide what I need to do from the environment to make it look very complex. And I don't need to build the whole building even. And check it out. That's what happened. And we have a different camera angle because I have decided the light is looking better. And also we have a white street in the foreground, and I wanted to avoid this effect because in general asphalt is not that very nice. So, and in the end, just a very fast comparison of two pictures, the draft rendering and the final rendering. And we will talk about this process of post-production in our next chapters. And I hope you will very enjoy this section because I am. It's always very exciting working in 2D. Also, I love to create perfect scenes in 3ds Max, but sometimes it's very tempting, to leave the 3D and go very fast into 2D because, you can play with the colors, and we will do all that stuff in the next section. And that's it for today for this presentation. I'd like to show you two scenes I have prepared for you for today. And we have the first architecture scene provided by CG Record team. And yeah, that's the same building as in the presentation. It's some kind of a bank in our capital city. And we have one more scene for you guys to practice today, the composition. It's a small single family house created by Konrad Hamala, our administrator. And now I'd like you guys to work on these scenes and create few compositions using basic objects like, for examples, dynamic objects, I don't know, and even simple boxes. And try out the framing methods and show me the result, and we will work on them in the next Monday and Tuesday during the consultations. So it's a very simple task, but it might seem simple, but in fact the composition is a very, very hard part, and you can say a composition is perfect. In fact, it's really very hard to achieve it. Okay, and I'd like to show you a small surprise also for you today, because I have prepared a very nice setup of textures from some shops in Vienna, and you can use these textures to create a studio setup, or just when you will need it for a shopping mall rendering, then you go. And we have, I don't know, I think 12 maps like this in high resolution. And also I have prepared for you some more photographs from architecture like this, Zaha Hadid, and much more. And in the end we have also some cool pictures from grass and plants in high definition. So you can see all the details, and we will talk in next chapters also about grass creation, and we will talk about custom plant modeling. So these pics might be useful also. So I'm Simon HC. Today is the first lecture day, and you are on CG workshop training exteriors. And I see you on Monday. I'm awaiting your comments, of course, emails, and please remember to read the rules section. And each of you guys, please, after this lecture, just go straight to the training members and start your own treat where you will show us your process, first from the composition techniques, and later on we will work on your own scenes if you wish to, or we will provide you pretty full scenes also you can practice on with pause settings. And for general discussion, go to the live chat. You can meet our tutors on Tuesday between 4 and 8 p.m. 01 GMT on Plus, so it's the local Warsaw time. And once again, I'm Simon HC, and I see you next time.